Hi.
Hi, it's been a little bit of a moment.
No,
It's
I
been a
don't
bit
like
of a
when we
moment.
skipped one, man. It made me sad.
And then we didn't get a chance to catch up or anything. It's
No,
been,
I was like, this is not okay. I mean, it was okay for obviously what we needed to do, but like, I was like, it seems like
yeah, it's
so
been,
much has happened.
I was,
Uh,
so I was sitting down and I was like, I need to put a list to kind of like, to track because since the last time we've been on, like, and I keep saying to myself sometimes when I'm watching CNN and then when I decide I don't want to watch CNN, they're
oh,
like, "Ooh, I should have really watched CNN," and just kind of document because there's certain times I'm tuning myself out so that I can focus on everything else I've got to do.
like, the rest
Yeah,
of the day,
everything else I've
right?
got to do. I'm
Yeah.
like, right now, I'm not. No, I can't get drawn into this right now because I got all these other things I've got to do over here. And if I get caught on this, I'm not going to do all those other things over
Well,
here.
and it's not even just I can get just like I'm emotionally drained too, right? Like,
Well,
so then
exactly. And what
it's
we do
yeah.
takes energy. What we do for a living, right, takes us being positive, right, to help people and all this kind of stuff. So you can't show up in a room
I
and be
I
like,
I
really?
did. I'm going to own it that I did. I was teaching a
Did you?
leadership class. I was teaching a leadership class. I'm like, for someone that really likes people, I don't know if I like people right now. Like, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna own it, right? But it's so hard, especially with what we do with that. Well, welcome and we'll introduce for a second, and then we'll dive into this because like otherwise we're gonna be like 20 minutes in before we know it because we're like, oh, let's see. So my name is Trisha Braddock. This is Lizzie Morris. And oh, did I lose your speaker?
No, you didn't lose me. You didn't lose me.
Oh, okay.
I'm decided I'm using one screen and I'm having to learn to do just one screen, which is a little bit difficult,
Different. Okay.
no matter how big it is. Go ahead.
So we've known each other, colleagues in the agile space for quite some time, and one of the we've had lots of different conversations over the years. Agile specific, work specific, female and tech specific, racial specific, just all sorts of things. It really has never really been much of boundaries at different times. And as things continue to progress, and as 2020 happened with George Floyd and others, Breonna Taylor and everything, we were having a conversation, just the two of us on the phone as we did. And at one point, Lizzie said, "Gosh, this is what I wish people could hear." And I said, "Well, why can't they?" And so this is us continuing our conversations that we've always had, but doing it in a way that maybe others don't have access to have these conversations, maybe are not comfortable to have these conversations, maybe don't have anyone to have these conversations with. And so it's very different than what we kind of do on a regular basis. Like we both train and we both coach, and those tend to be a lot of interactive and very like
Very
very
high
like
energy.
yeah, and this we sometimes can forget that others are watching us. Because we're just going to dive into conversations and explore things and talk through things, and guaranteed probably one, if not both of us, will say something that might not be right, might hit a different trigger for somebody else. But this is part of it, is us learning and growing and being willing to engage in the conversation and learn what those differences are and what those experiences and what those initial thoughts are that people have, in a way that helps us achieve what we're trying to do and have a better world, better workplaces in particular.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's our big goal is the better workplaces, right? Because if we aren't bettering the workplaces for us, then it's going to make it a lot harder for others. Because we spend so much time in our spaces dealing with corporate space, because most of our clients are corporate clients or corporate employees, right? Outside of what I would call my coaching business, so to speak. That's where all the body of our people are that we talk to. And it's so easy for corporate to just focus in on, we've ticked all these boxes.
Yeah, it's
So
business, it's not personal, right?
right, we have all these sayings, and I have to hold my hand up that sometimes I bought into those myself, because it was so programmed into us. So there were so many ways
Well, it
when you
felt
go
safe.
to work. Right. You don't have this topic. We don't talk about this. We stay professional. We put on all these guises and keep all these walls up so that we can be great. Whatever the great has been, defined for us to be in these spaces. But what is interesting now, I was listening, and what I'm loving, have you noticed? There's so many more people now on LinkedIn having these conversations. So there's all these shows that have popped up now. Everybody's got LinkedIn's live and they do it. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome, because you're hearing the conversations from so many perspectives.
Yeah.
And audiences on different conversations that are happening in different shows are different audiences. Therefore, there's different comments that are coming up. And what I'm loving is seeing some of the spaces that are not necessarily gravitating to the whole. Hi, Tabitha. But they're gravitating maybe to more Black professionals or Black entrepreneurs are in spaces. And so it's almost like, although it's on LinkedIn Live, it's a private conversation that's happening between this group of community, which is so interesting.
Nice.
Right. So therefore, people are speaking how they're feeling and how they're hurting. And I heard the best ever conversation that happened. I want to say it was 2 days ago with a couple of people I'd been trying to get on our show, in fact, that are DEI specialists. Right. Wow. And they have just launched a application called Dipper.com. And what Dipper.com is a place where they're inviting Blacks to come and talk about their work environments, so they can score work environments that they're really safe or they're not safe, or do not go and work there regardless of what they tell you in the interview. It'll be horrid. And they had 2 fabulous guests on. One guest was, why can't I think of her name now?
I hate when that happens.
I go by they then, but it's I want to say it's Leah. Oh, I hope it is. I have to go, and I'm sorry if I got it wrong.
I know.
But,
I hate when that happens.
That I've done that right. And Deandra. So there was these 2 guests. Deandra was a HR consultant, DEI specialist.
Okay.
So was Leah, but Leah was in a different space. Leah was in a space of, I'm going to go in and put the systems in that are going to make your company do the right bloody thing.
Aww.
Right. So she went in from an organizational systems perspective and challenged the system. This system has a problem and we have to deal with the system for it. So that's kind of like our space of where we're talking systems and systems engineering, and that she was that. And then Deanna was really coming up with the programs and that level of accountability. There was a fabulous thing that she said, that when the verdict went out, when the new shooting had happened, that she talked to organizations who she'd worked with, past clients, and she works with big corporate clients, and they had said, yeah, we need to do something. You're right. But nobody actually did anything to create safe spaces where Black employees would go together within their space and just be safe and have some mental care, and the organization do that. And some organizations said to her, we just don't have the budget for that kind of stuff right now. We'd rather have a space where everybody can go to. And that is the dream, obviously, for all people to be able to come into a space and speak. But to be able to foster for all people to be able to come and speak, we still have to deal with the systematic problem that we've got for people to feel safe to really speak and say what's going on. Otherwise, they can't do that. And so it really challenged me to say, okay, in this DEI space and taking on DEI clients, how do you keep them understanding? And this is why our show started, right? Was to keep the conversation going in front of the corporate spaces. So even if it wasn't in the social media and it wasn't mass, that everybody's attention was on it everywhere, to force them that when the forcing stopped, they would still be doing the right thing. And they'd be on this thing as a journey.
Yeah.
But a lot of corporations are still eventing this.
Well, it's not, I would go even a step further than that. Like, there's an element of me that went, and maybe this was just me. I don't know. Like I spent that morning and that day, like even though we didn't talk, I still texted you, right? Like I was reaching out to people that I knew were right, like waiting, like anxious, like anxiety, and some responses I got back were humorous, like right, some were dejected, some were like hope, right, and it was a wide spectrum of different people and where they were, and some were colleagues and some were personal friends, right, just different dynamics. But I really, I mean, I'd spent this morning trying to give space and create support of knowing that we others are watching as well, right? Like, and that, like, it isn't just that. And somebody was calling a meeting and they're like, let's do this meeting. I'm like, it felt like I was back in 9/11 when I was at a client and they were like, no, we're going to have a meeting. I'm like, no, we're not right now. My entire in-law family is in New York. We are not having a freaking meeting right now. Are you insane? Right. And I felt that same thing again, where on 9/11, my client, we were in Kansas City. They were in a bunker, basically. Like it took them a while to realize the gravity of what was happening that day. And I felt like all of that all over again that day. Like, because it was like, here I am trying to do all these things and like knowing that I can't even come close to really supporting people. And all I wanted to do, and most of you, I think I was like, I wish I could hug you right now. Like, and just support. Right. Mm-hmm. And yet others going, well, let's have this meeting. I'm like, I no, like it felt disrespectful and frustrating for me that we weren't, as corporations, understanding the gravity of what was happening and what we were asking of people in that moment. Same as I felt in 9/11, where I was told by the client, if I drove back to Chicago and I didn't come back, my contract was going to be ended, right? They ended up softening that language as they started to get the gravity of what was happening, right? But I felt that same way. It was like, what do you mean? Who cares? It's just a trial. And I was like, no, it's not just a trial.
It wasn't just
looking at these as individual little versus the accumulated harm, versus the accumulated trauma, versus the accumulated what's going to happen, what path are we going down. And it was infuriating for me that day, like watching businesses just go like, yeah, it's business as usual, and expecting not just even that they have a space for you to go to, but why would you be upset today? Or why are you breaking out tears that you don't want to do that at work, right? Like just the pure, is it naive ignorance? What I don't.
Well, it's not. It's the idea. It's not me. Privilege? I don't relate. I don't understand. So it steps. It's easy to put it in the privilege bucket, right? Because it's just privileged. But it's the concept of there's no connection to it. There's no connection. What does this do to affect my life? My life says exactly what are you talking about? Why? What's the big deal? It's a trial, it's etc. Right? It's no connection. Right? And so I don't even realize I should have empathy about this right now, because again, think about it. Prior to the trial now being back in our face, this is something that happened last year. It was horrid last year. Oh my God, I had to feel it last year. I don't want to feel that again. Oh my God, are you asking me to go back to that? I don't want that. But understand, this is what Blacks live with every bloody day. And that's the part. Everybody tasted and was sprinkled last year with what it is Blacks live with. But it was a sprinkle. It was just a flicker, right? Time went, new news came. So the horrors of what happens to Blacks on an everyday basis went back to being the norm, not front news. And again, these things Blacks know all the time are happening. George Floyd just happened to be one of many cases, but the case that took the whole world these things have been happening and you just haven't been paying attention to them.
And I mean, I guess it's a compounded dynamic, right? Because if you don't have representation in senior leadership, there isn't anybody calling that out. There isn't anybody highlighting that this might be like, we might need to do something on this day, right? Like we think about it for 9/11. We think about it for other like key moments and dates and things. And without that representation, there isn't anybody highlighting like this need for their employee base, this need for their teams within the organization.
I listened to a woman, right? Businesswoman. She has one son. And she said, as the trial was going, she felt herself having anxiety for her 4-year-old child. Oh my God, because this could mean he's in even, her words were, this could mean he's in even more danger than he normally would be. And it'd be okay. And it put me back to, I have been watching, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it yet, the 13th Amendment on Netflix. And people, if you haven't watched it, you've got to watch it. It's just a fabulous, educational, amazing series. And because there's so many actors kind of narrating it, it's almost like watching a Broadway play. It's so very well done. But there was a pivotal case that the Supreme Court judged against, and I can see the man's photograph right now, but bloody hell, can't think of his name. So that's gonna
names are hard today. Names are hard today.
Today, I apologize because see, this is where I feel I do a disjustice, because there are people who are carrying all these names and they can just like kind of fire them off. But his case, he had been working for a doctor in a state. So let me just like paraphrase. He'd been working for a doctor in a state, and by what the state had per se said, now that the doctor had died, he was a free man. So he was free, right? And he could have a free life and live. However, he had to go against different states on this. And the state that the doctor originally lived in said, hell no, you are not free. You are still a slave, right? And as a result, you don't have freedom. So he went to court to have the Supreme Court judge him to be a full human with full citizenship rights. So the Supreme Court said, oh no, bro, you ain't no full human. Nah, mate, you ain't a full human. I don't know why you bothered to come all the way here thinking we were going to say you were a full human, but no. And guess what? We're now going to make a law too, right? Superimpose and systemize the fact that y'all and anybody look like you, not full humans. So yes, what has happened to you in the past can continue to happen to you right now. You're not free. That case set up the foundation for what we're dealing with today. And sadly, when, coming from our world, I'm such a, what is the fast solution? Right? I'm always looking for what is a quick innovation solution? And when I sat and I watched this show, kind of, then it kind of got me up on a lot of American history that I didn't know about, legal American history. Right. I'm like, okay, so what we need is some bloody laws to get placed. What the hell? Why don't we just do that? And so this is me like, I see, this is easy. It's laws. Come on, people, right? You're going and you're wanting blacks to vote for you. Get the laws in place. Let's do this. Why are we not putting these laws in place? And you see, the fact that we're not is answering a question and making a statement. And the statement it's making to blacks in America is, we really don't want you seriously coming back up here, like this whole normal thing. Yeah, we know it was bad and it looks bad now, but we need to sit here as long as possible because it's helping us do some other stuff that we're doing.
Well, and I think it gets compounded in the workplace too, because I need to be careful because I don't have permission to share this specific scenario, but I'm going to be asking for it because I actually think this is, in fact, maybe I even ask her and see if she wants to come on with us too. Mm-hmm. But like in the workplace, so one of the things that I hear from a lot of white leaders, okay, is well, we don't want to make it worse. Right? Or that doesn't affect us here. Here, this is about business. Police dynamic. And so in some ways, this is Trisha speaking, right? In
Mhm.
some ways, I understand 100% why the racism and the dynamics in police and Black is the front and center one. But I think it does disservice to a lot of white people understanding we're talking about healthcare. We're talking about banking. We're talking about home ownership, like just so many other industries too. And so then what I'm watching happen is, and I'm having to have these conversations, is somebody will be like, no, I can pick apart this one example. So then it doesn't, like, as long as I can pick apart one, then I can negate and not have to worry about the rest. Right. And so like we saw that with Ma'Khia Bryant, right? Like as long as there's something to pick apart, like then I can just dismiss it and say, see, you're overreacting to all of it. And negating the accumulated harm, negating the just pure exhaustion and just wanting 24 hours.
Right.
And a child dynamic, despite being called a woman multiple times. But because there's these other elements that we pick it apart, and then as a result of that, there's a part of it gives us freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like then it's not the big issue that I need a quick fix for. It's not that big of a deal. There's also this overwhelming that I get from a lot of people is like, what am I supposed to do? I can't make a law. I don't have a problem, right? But I've been really challenging on that one in particular in the workplace, because for me, there's an element of, but you do have control over creating an environment where people feel seen and witnessed. And so I think what I ended up articulating at the end, and I'm not going to do a good job even right now, I know it, but like, by caring about and creating that space, even if it's a physical space or just a verbal, any kind of witnessing acknowledgement, right? To your point, doesn't just tell my Black and POC and Indigenous employees that I care, but that I understand and recognize these challenges that they may face inside my org as well. And I think that's the combo that people don't like, but I'm not responsible. I've never been to Minneapolis, right? Like this separation.
Yeah.
But the problem is that separation speaks volumes for what you're then going to center in the organization.
Right. Definitely. So the, I should have looked her up. Right. She said, they said, go by what her actual pronoun. They said, we need to fix shit. And that was exactly what she said. Fix it. Fix shit. If you haven't fixed shit, don't talk to me about it. Fix it. And that was literally the thing. And I said, oh my God. I said in the comments, that's your book. That should be the book. That should be the book. Right? Because it was just so pointed, because I apologize when you're watching. They didn't give it any room for excuses. If you're talking about you want DEI, you don't get to just hire somebody and dump it on them, fix us. You look at your system and you challenge your system and you re-engineer it. So at every single level, women, Indigenous, LGBTQ, disabled, veterans, everybody, the whole spectrum of DEI.
Intersectionality, right? Across
all the intersectionality, you are actually making your systems work to support, create spaces, respect, show belonging. That is when we talk about, and I'm going to flip back into our industry a second, right? When we talk about agile transformations today, if we aren't in our industry calling out the DEI element, we're failing. So we have to challenge that too, because we're all about individuals and interactions. Well, if each individual isn't being respected, counted, and seen, how can we expect them to collaborate well?
Yeah.
You're not going to get great collaboration. It's going to be crappy. So it's something we in our community have to be calling out and coming up with systems and looking to address it, and not
And
looking to
yet I
ignore it.
just was in a community event where somebody listed a session on DEI, and no, a handful of us.
Yeah, it's
And
hard.
because I think that's that dynamic of, and this is not an excuse, right? But like, this is what I'm trying to express that viewpoint of just saying, like, I feel overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. And I'm terrified that I'm going to do the wrong thing and be called a Karen, right? Like I hear that all the time. And I have to laugh to a certain degree. And I'm kind of, well, you know me, like I do have a filter sometimes. I swear I do have a filter sometimes, but like, but I'm watching this, like speaking of our industry, right? We talk about the growth mindset. We talk about learning and that things are complex and there is no black and white, and that we have to discover value and discover right with it. And yet the labeling of whether it's racist, sexist, right, like homophobic, that label, then somehow we've given so much power to the label versus the behavior. And so people will spend more time trying to advocate and defend and reject the label, that often they actually are just reinforcing further the behaviors that got that label to begin with, right? And so here we're watching this growth mindset. And we talked a little bit about this when we were talking about the Sharon Osbourne stuff, right? But like, I'm trying to think of the fix it thing, right? Like, so I'm trying to think of in the workplace, how to almost, and I hate, because I don't even see, I'm stuttering because I don't even know if I really like this. So I'm still thinking this through. Okay, like I want to separate the labeling from the behaviors, right? Like, because I feel like when and I get it, like I've done it to somebody, I'm like, well, that's really sexist, right? Like, and I like, and because in some ways it takes power back for me to just name it for what it is, right? But the minute I label that person sounds like, oh, I have a mom, I have a sister, I have a daughter, right? And I was like, doesn't still change what you just did to me was sexist, right? Like, and but they're so focused on the label being this binary forever label versus actually hearing the impact and working on the behavior. And one of the reasons we do this continuing the conversation is to explore those behaviors and help learn and grow. But I'm watching more and more people, and I'm just, and maybe this is why it's disheartening to me, I'm watching more and more people be exposed to stories, right? Hear your story, hear that pain, hear why this should have even been a discussion on that day with the verdict coming back, right? And then going, but I don't want to anywhere near it because I'm terrified of being called Karen. I'm terrified of being called, right? Like, and
no, it stops. So the labels,
the conversation,
what we would call a conversation, an impediment to the conversation, right? It's a blocker.
It's a blocker.
Right? Because I am now so scared because we have now cancel culture, etc., all these other things. I'm so scared, as you would say, of being the carrot. Because if I am the carrot, it can affect my whole life now. Before, if I was a carrot, people just ignore it, I wouldn't be affected. But oh my God, it could affect me for forever now. So there is a fear factor.
Which isn't for me, it's consequence, it's accountability, it's learning. But I think, and maybe I'm naive in this, right? But no, I'm not. I'm not gonna drop this down. I have said and done horribly stupid, inappropriate things numerous times. Right. I'm sure I'm going to do another one. Like there's so much bias and bad things in me, like that. I know that. But in every time that it's happened, I own it. Maybe not instantly, right? Like I'm embarrassed, I'm shamed, right? Like I want to shame myself, but I try to own it and I'm trying to learn, right? I have never felt canceled as a result of that. Right. I've never felt like it's impacted me for the rest of my, except in a positive way that I've learned and gotten better. But that's not the stories that get told.
No, but see, the growth stories and the personal reflection and shifts often happen in private vacuums.
Yeah. Okay.
So somebody's having a personal moment, and maybe they share that with a personal friend. But when it comes to putting
That's
that on stage, they don't want to put that on stage because there is again the judgment factor that could come from it that I was even there. So again, people are looking at where I was, not where I am now, and they're not looking at the journey. So I think what you're talking about at starting to address the behaviors is taking that systems approach.
yeah.
That's what it's taking. It's saying, okay, let's understand why
You
when
felt
you,
entitled to do that thing.
there you go. What's been happening for you, why that for you is a norm that you have to now make abnormal to you. And do you understand why you need to make it abnormal to you now? And what is it going to take? Because you're talking about building different, if we think about it, we're talking about building different muscles. Because even if you look about the brain, right?
Yeah,
If
and it
we,
may not even be abnormal or normal. It might be unconscious, right? Like you just have never thought of it too.
well, there you go. That goes with that whole idea now of it's a brain situation. So when I'm breathing in and breathing out, I don't think about inhaling and exhaling unless I'm going into meditation, right? I'm just like,
Or that yoga teacher keeps talking and then she says something like, this should feel both hard and exhilarating. Never in my life has a pose felt exhilarating, by the way, ever in yoga.
you haven't
But
grown to
side
that
point,
part.
sorry.
You haven't grown to that part yet. Okay, you're on the journey. All right, you are still just working on the physical, the posing and taking the posture. You have to get to the lower levels.
God. You
Okay,
do more yoga.
right? We have to do more where it gets on the inside, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the behavior.
I love it.
Is getting on the inside, and I think I love the fact you brought that yoga reference up.
I mean,
Because I think
I'm
a lot of
both
people are
upset
there right
it
now.
was a joke, and now I'm like, dang it.
It's a good girl. You can
It's
use that's a
legit.
good teacher. It's legit because you're trying so hard to hold this pose, right? You're trying to bend in this way you've never bent before, and doing it while saying, "I'm enjoying this. It's enlightening to me." When really, what you probably want to say is, "I want the world to go back to the way it was and leave me the hell alone."
Well, and especially
That's
after
sometimes
this
how people are
past year.
feeling.
Well, and and with the pandemic, right, of just this last year and not being able to see people and frustrations and all, I mean, people are mentally exhausted. By the way, when you do leave your house, please be careful because there are way too many of people I know that are like finally leaving their house, like, they're vaccinated or whatever, and then they break an ankle or a wrist or something because they don't realize how mentally exhausted we all are, right? And so we're like, woohoo!
Have you got heels back on?
Right, like I have not worn heels in over a year. Like I don't even I'm gonna break an ankle. Like right?
I went out. I think it was about 3 weeks ago to the doctor. Yeah, I was going to the doctor, and I thought, oh, let's just put a pair of brown heels on to match what I'm wearing. I used to walk the crap out of those heels. Do you understand me? When I put those heels on, it was like, what am I doing right now? Where are my flats? Where are my sandals? Where are my slippers? This is not working. Is everybody else seeing that? I'm just kind of doing, what am I doing here?
I mean, all jokes aside with this, like, I do think there's an element that these conversations are they would be hard on a good day. They are hard when we're mentally exhausted, when we're still living in uncertainty. And I try to highlight this as the bridge, right? Like, I, as a white person, financially stable, right, family and things, like, this has been a rough period, right? That said, this is my bridge of going, and others have been feeling this way for a very long time. Like, it puts that into perspective for me of realizing and going, now when people say, how you doing? I'm like, I can't complain, all things considered, right? Because the fact is there I'm 5 days away from my 2-week period after my second shot, right? And just by the way, but just so that we're really clear, and then I don't care what the road, like the next time I see you, it's just gonna be a giant cuddle puddle, like where I'm just gonna we're just gonna hug for like ridiculous periods of time. Like I am like it is on, people, okay? But I can recognize that. Like I see that bridge. Right. It actually helps me to have more understanding of why people are like, fix this shit. Like no more excuses. I'm done. Right. Because I'm to that point after the pandemic restrictions for, and I agree with them. I'm not even anti, like I'm not, but I'm exhausted from that. Now I can apply that and go, I can only imagine the accumulated elements of everything else. I shut my mouth and listen. Right. And I'm able to do that. What I'm struggling with is how to get more leaders to do that. Right. We teach leaders. So many people teach leaders, and I'm not on board with this, obviously, but like, you're the expert, you're supposed to know everything, right? Like, and all these horrible,
that's horrible, so much pressure,
horrible leadership,
then that's sitting on these leaders, and then they don't want to fail, and they don't want to be that leader, the carrot leader. right? Because and so again, this will be then the shadow that follows them. So there's got to be the concept of, and this is one of the things I say when I'm coaching leaders, is that as a leader, your job is to be strategic and find the people who can help you build the teams that will make you look good. You don't
create
have to
the
be
right space, create the right environment for people to thrive, right?
Yes. And when you make mistakes, own it. Like upfront say, look, I'm coming into this and I want our organization to be X or our department to be X. I don't know what I'm really doing in this area, but I'm looking to you to tell me, and I'm looking to you to hold me accountable. And when I fail, please forgive me. Understand my intention is not to fail you. My intention is to create the space that we'll be proud of tomorrow. Saying these kinds of things and saying them over and over and over and over again till they start to be believed and trusted.
Well, and I'm coming at it kind of hard. And so I own that I was one of the people that was very good about opening doors. I didn't necessarily think about the inclusion part. And I own that. And that's something that I have been working on for many years now, for several years pre George Floyd with this, right? But I'm getting a little more hard line myself in that I'm highlighting the leaders. Look, you can keep pretending like this isn't something you have to learn or get. Lawsuits are coming because the people's willingness to continue to tolerate, whether it's a female dynamic or LGBT, like the discrimination and hate and microaggression, like our willingness to tolerate this is less and less and less. Right. And so just from like you've said it in the past on other ones, I don't think you said it today, but you've said it in the past, is the money talks, right? In the corporate world. And at the end of the day, you're going to be facing some lawsuits.
It's going to be really expensive.
It's going to be really expensive to continue to ignore learning how to embrace intersectionality in the workplace.
Yes. And it's one of the things that, it was one of the biggest sections in the DEI practitioner course, was that building the case. Because what people do not understand is from the minute they interview somebody, there is a possibility of your staff or you doing something that is legally liable from the interview process. That blew my mind. Now let's think about all the people you've got as employees. What have you turned your back on? What have you ignored?
What have you thought wasn't a big deal? What have you dismissed or invalidated?
Yeah. How many we're not going to promote them. They do have a little bit of an attitude. How many of those people are going to become more and more educated now and more aware? Because one of the things I am seeing happening in what, let's call it the private Black professional community, so to speak, right, is that information is being shared. Information that people didn't have before. People are being equipped to understand, yes, you have rights and we will help you. Don't worry about it. If you don't know them, I'm going to stand with you as a sister, as a brother, right? And I'm going to help you get yours. There has been so much more coming together, right? That has just blown my mind. People are standing in the gap for each other. So somebody else will come and defend somebody else and give them all that they need. Look, go here, go here, go here, quote this, say this. So people are coming equipped now. You're no longer, and this is probably something leaders need to understand. When you think you're dealing with one person now, you're dealing with an entire nation. An entire nation of pain and educated people.
I love that. Yeah. Connected.
They are
Connected
the pain, the onslaught of last year brought about to people who have postured and been the Black professionals who the ones you've loved. Oh, we love them. They're just so different. All those ones you've said
they're not
about,
like them.
right? Those ones you've labeled that way. Those ones have been reignited with a force because they're not just thinking about themselves. They're thinking about their children. They think about the generations ahead of them and what they've tolerated and stomached and pushed down, way down. They're not prepared for anybody else to have to go through that journey because they don't want it to be them, their child, their niece, their nephew. They're not prepared for that. They refuse. So there is a sense of we refuse. And it's not about, they often say that it's not the loud ones you need to fear. It's the quiet ones, the thinkers, the deliberators, because they're not blowing stuff up. They're not the ones who are going in the riots. They're the ones who understand your system. And they will know your weak spots in your system. And when the time comes, they know exactly how to lay the right blow. Those are the people you've got to be concerned about. And that's why corporations need to do better, because you have those people sitting in your organization and working with you and smiling every day, codexing you all day long.
Yep. Code switching like nobody's business, right?
All day long. And they're just building and building and building their cases and helping others do it. So why have to go for a multi-million-dollar lawsuit 12 or 6 times? Why not spend the funds?
Well, and I think that's an interesting dynamic, because it is talking about switching the power dynamics, right? Because of that connected but I mean, I'm even thinking about that in terms of, salaries and just across the board, right? Across the board. But I think that there is also a swell of people, or at least I hope that the swell keeps getting bigger, of people that can draw parallels, right? Like I'll never understand, the Black experience in those things, but I can draw the parallel of going, as a female in IT, or right? And in a lot of cases that I liked it. Yeah, it was like almost that common mission, or common bridge, common similar dynamic, even if it's different, even if the scale of it is different, even if in instances, but there is this level of a swell of people that underrepresented or undervalued or underutilized or under just the not accepted majority, right? That collectively, the intersectionality of the number of people that collectively, it is bigger, but we hadn't been coming together, right?
No, and we are. I think we are now. I think everybody's coming together because everybody's been poked at. Right. And everybody's fed up of being poking. So all the bears have been poked. So now you get brown bears, you get white bears, right? You get short bears, you get big bears from all different continents of bears, and they're all coming together. right? And bears have a really good ability to stand on two legs, even though you've always seen them walking on fours. When they
Oh,
stand
you've
on
got
two
like this
legs,
whole bear analogy going. Look at you.
I'm going with this.
You're
I am
going.
going
Look
with
at
this.
you.
I am, and I'm having such visuals as I'm seeing
There's a
this.
visual.
Right?
I feel like a bear icon is coming with continue the
It is, right?
conversation.
That could be our mascot, right? I've walked on all fours before, but now we're standing on hind feet, and we're
saying
on it
what our
together.
boundaries are, right?
Yes.
And what's acceptable and what's not. And you know, there is a shame dynamic that comes in. And I don't know if you experience this, but I even think about some of the things that I tolerated as a female in tech that I would never tolerate now.
Oh God. Yeah.
And there is some shame in that.
Yeah.
I love Jermaine's kind of the Stockholm syndrome. Not only did I accept it and take it, I don't know if I would say I encouraged it. I excused it. I justified it.
I justified it to other women who had problems with it. I was like, you know what? Hey, it's just the way
it happened. I mean, I always focused on trying to support too, but I did invalidate, right? Like it was so accustomed, so normal, so expected that it just didn't even shock me anymore, right? And that was like this is one of my good friends. He was just like, if I see one person post on Facebook that they are shocked by, you know, like that people are wondering what's going to happen with this verdict, I'm going to come through my screen, like, right? Like the how can you still be shocked kind of feeling, frustration that can take place. But I've got to go back to training.
So I've got looking at time. You got a hard stop. We definitely.
I do. I have a hard stop. I am training today on impactful speaking in training course for these 2 days. So.
Oh, interesting. Did you see my quote today? That's so interesting. You know, we're tied up where I talked about allowing your voice and your vibration to be heard. And you're talking about impactful preaching. Look at that.
Yep.
I tell you, awesome. Jermaine, we had Tabitha. We want to thank you so much for your comments. We are getting ready to close down now. We will be here in 2 weeks on a Thursday again talking. And hopefully we are going to have a guest who used to be a police commander.
Nice.
Female.
Nice.
Yes, female. Nice.
Yeah,
it's going to be pretty cool to hear her story about some of the experiences she's had, because as you notice, we are pulling naturally, even though we only touched on it today, really pulling in on this intersectionality, and that's what we're bringing to you, because in order to affect the system, we're going to have to find which points we can hit first that will have an intersectional enough lift that we can really make momentum. And as Lily said, fix some shit.
Perfect. Well, a pleasure as always.
As always, take care. Everybody, we want to thank you. She's about to go back. Please follow Trisha on social media so you can find out what she's doing. LinkedIn. She's a boss on LinkedIn. You will find the stuff that she is working on. She always put out, she doesn't like to promote her courses too much. So to find out if she's got a course, you're going to have to follow her.
I'm now realizing that I should have just already ended this call because I'm not digging any of that. I got to go. Okay.
Go.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. So please follow Trish on LinkedIn so you can learn more about what she's doing. That is where she will talk about her actual trainings that she's doing, because she doesn't tend to put them out on many places. She's very particular who gets to attend her leadership courses. She wants leaders who want change and who are willing to do the work. So please look her up, Trisha Broderick on LinkedIn. I want to let you guys know about this 5-day challenge that I am doing with Bearded Eagle. We are doing a 5-day challenge on helping agile professionals find the positions that work for them, the ones that fit them to a T. So if you want to learn more about that, please be sure to go to my page on LinkedIn. You can take this link that's right here, go to bit.ly, grab my spot, and be part of this challenge so that you can experience a space that fits the person that is you, that really allows you to feel valued, so that no matter where you are, no matter what you look like, you found the spot where when you show up, everybody is respecting you. Everybody's letting you know that you matter, because that is so very, very, very important. So I want to thank you all for being here with us today. See you again in 2 weeks on a Thursday at 1 p.m. Central, where we continue the conversation. And please make those steps to continue the conversation wherever you are. The conversations can be difficult. They're not always easy, but they are doable. And let's make sure the intention of change is always seeding the actions and the things that we say. Take care for now. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful rest of the week.